Hi there. Ooh, this is a bit of a gulp actually I'm taking here. Um, I'm continuing my discussion of Gnosticism and the 10 affirmational words that I have attributed to the Sephirot of the Tree of Life in the study of Kabbalah. And we come to the ninth Sephirot, which is Yesod, which means foundation. And there's a lot you could say about this, really. Well, I mean, there's a lifetime of work with each of these Sephirot, really, to understand them fully. And then by the end, you have to start all over again. Anyway, foundation, basically. The foundation is the Logos, it's the Logos. And God said, let there be light. So you've got God, who is the source, the architect, said, the power of the word, the power of the utterance, let there be light. And this let there be light is the foundation of the entire universe as we know it. Of course, there is a transcendental universe beyond this one and beyond the universe as created by the the archetype and the architect of all. But the architect of all said, let there be light, and then there was light, and then everything else came from that sort of big bang. And so we have to accept that this has happened. So when I talk about accept being the fundamental affirmational word for Yesod, we have to accept a great many things, in fact, in life. We have to accept that this world was created by the architect, by the demiurge, who said, let there be light, and there was light. And the foundation of all existence was laid down right there and then. Notice that there wasn't any light before there was light, which is interesting. This is also true in Hinduism, where the Om actually came before, it predates all existence. So there was Om, and then everything arose from Om, and there was nothing. Nothing existed before Om, only after Om was uttered, and when it sort of we're hearing the echo of Om, but when it was uttered, all existence came into being, called the Pranava. So I guess it's a little bit like it in Genesis 1:1, similar anyway. So we must accept that everything has been created. Even if we accept later on there are other nuances to this general dogma about creation. And I'm not a creationist, as you'll see later on. But, however, Yesod also refers to the sphere of the moon, which is traditionally attributed to dreams. And if we look up the top box here, it is through dreams, reverie, and trances of various kinds, produced by various spiritual exercises, that create what I call non-localized events. And these non-localized events are able to penetrate, to a certain degree, the veil that lies between us and the hidden worlds, the occult worlds on one hand, and the transcendental world on the other. So they are accessed by a similar path, which is the path of Yesod. So we must accept that our dreams, our trances, our reveries are very, very important, and you should always keep a dream diary and keep a careful note of your dreams, the significant ones that you remember when you wake up in great detail. Sometimes they're coloured and lucid, and you can even touch things and smell things and experience and read books and things like that. These dreams are of great value to scientific illuminism and always have been and always will be. So that's the first thing to accept, that we penetrate the veil through dreams and reverie and trance. But then there's a more mundane acceptance, things that we have to accept. We have to accept that ultimately the world is as it is. And this has a great psychological effect of liberating oneself. One shrugs one's shoulders and says the world is as it is, and the world ultimately will always be as it is, because certain things have been laid down since its foundation, which are dualistic in nature, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. That's just the way it is. The world is as it is, and it liberates you from this sort of almost quasi-nihilism, liberates you from getting absorbed and distracted by the things of this world, even the positive things of this world, even helping other people, for example, can be distraction to the main task at hand. And so therefore you have to seek a dynamic equilibrium between caring for the transcendental on one hand and caring for your fellow man on the other, who is immanent to you, who's sharing the journey with you. But ultimately, the world is as it is, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change. The energy changes its form, but the energy doesn't change. And the other thing you have to accept, of course, is that you can only change within the limits of what can't be changed, and that's very important to recognise as well. With probably a well-known sort of an established idea here. This is an interesting. Every event, sorry about the typo there, has its acute epicenter of experience that exponentially dilutes towards the rim or the limit of that experience. So you have kind of like an epicenter, a beginning of the experience, and then as you go out to it, sort of towards its end, it becomes more and more diluted until it becomes merely an echo or memory of itself. And that's something to accept as well. These are sort of foundational ideas that you need to accept, assumptions, if you will, really. And coming down to here, now, this is everything happened. Everything has happened as a result of the interaction of random events, and this seems to go against the idea of creationism. It's evolution. Well, it's creationism at the beginning, but then it evolves after that, sort of a quasi-deistic idea that things that randomness was designed. And randomness is pretty much what operates now. So that's why the world is as it is, because everything, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. That's what sort of the psychological level. Once you know that the world is as it is on one hand, and on the other that everything occurs through random events, then you are liberated psychologically from becoming distracted and immersed and even corrupted by the world. But on the other hand, our perception of this world is limited by definition, and also the things that we observe are changed by the observer, by us as the observer. So given that, there are forces which are causal forces of which we are unaware. And these exist alongside the randomness of everything. So there is causality, there's creation, there is also randomness. These things are all part and parcel of our existence and evolution. We must come on to a definition of the event. This is a bit of an ideas tree, so I kind of... and I can't see anything either. We are localized events having duration. This is a very important thing. But before we get to that, of course, down here we have the famous quote from the Titanic: "The ship is made of iron. I can assure you, sir, she will sink." If you hit the table with your fist, the table is there, and you will hurt your fist. So this age of iron is sinking. The Titanic is going down by the bow. Life is as it is, and so this is a timely reminder that whatever you're dreaming about, whatever you're going into trance over, the ship is still sinking beneath your feet. Okay, and that which is below devours. So we're being devoured even as we trance out, even as we reach some transcendental mental state. The ship is still going down by the bow. But now on to the definition of we are all localized events having duration. So everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it has a start and it has a finish because an event has duration. never mind how we actually how we measure that duration, whether it's in seconds, nanoseconds, hours, centuries, millennia. It doesn't matter really. By what we call the duration time events. Everything that has an existence has duration. And we're localized because we're localized to this existence of physics, the physical world that we live in. So that's something that you have to accept, which brings you down with a bump psychologically when you're floating around in your little astral bubble. Never forget that you are ultimately a localized event with duration on this physical world, in this physical world. So we have here things that we must accept about the world and about ourselves and about change and about duration and about randomness and creation and design and causality and the interaction between all these. And we are aware of all this. That's what I mean. We are aware of all these little boxes floating around that are what they are, but we're also aware, or we can become aware, that we are non-localized non-events having no duration. And to become aware of this condition, yet this condition can be experienced. It is claimed. It has arisen, another typo, arisen by design rather than by chance. So it's when I say arisen by design, I don't mean the design in the Genesis verse 1, chapter 1. I mean in the design that it's not. It's design. Well, it didn't really come into design, really. It's almost non-design because it is eternal. But anyway, never mind about that. It's not part of this created, evolving world, which is driven by randomness and causality. And we are supposed to be able to become aware of the condition of non-localized non-eventness, as it were. And this is the great work. This is the great magical work, in fact, to become aware of this condition. And we become aware of this condition through chance and reverie and dream. That's how we become aware of this actual condition. So we become non-localized events, and then eventually we become aware that we are non-localized non-events having no duration. Now, when I asked my partner about this, can we become aware of this condition, the answer was emphatically no. Because how can you become aware of a non-event? We must be non-localized events having duration, or non-localized events having something kind of eternal nature to this event. But I mean non-event in it has no duration. So we have a problem here. Is it logically, how can you become aware of that you are a non-event having no duration, and that you're also non-localized? You might be able to become aware of non-localization through dreams and trances, but the next step, becoming aware that you are a non-event in eternity, is something altogether different and something altogether more challenging. But that is the nature of the great magical work, is to cultivate this awareness through scientific illumination, through dreams and trances and reveries and rituals and meditation and contemplation, and through mantra, through repeating or chanting certain magical formulae. This is what's claimed anyway. And we need to accept that this is the case, that this is the goal, that this is the path, the spiritual path that is laid before us. Now, I have sort of all these boxes bear detailed comment on their own, really. And this is really just a brief sort of overview of the things that we need to accept or assume in order for us to work psychologically. But as far as accepting on the psychological level, I think changing things within the limits of things that cannot be changed is a good idea to bear in mind. That's kind of like the sort of Alcoholics Anonymous kind of way of looking at things. Then you just avoid frustration and avoid anger and rage. when things don't go your way, which they very rarely do. The world is as it is, ultimately, and now, of course. We are also, we start off with a very acute experience, and then it becomes diluted over time. Same with our emotions. Our emotions are acute, and then they dilute. And then we recollect our emotions in tranquility and write them down as poetry or as music or as in sculpture or painting or something like that, some artistic medium or even in dreams themselves. So that's a good thing to accept. Everything is random and yet causal at the same time. That's an interesting thing to accept as well. That produces a psychological release if you cultivate this every day. This feeling that we are in control and yet also not in control. That's a very interesting thing. You have to accept that your perception of reality is limited, which is why dreams, non-localized events, are used to penetrate the veil, which would expand our perception very greatly if we could penetrate it. But whilst you're doing all this airy-fairy stuff, don't forget that time is of the essence, or is it? And the world is imploding. The age of iron is going down by the bow. The ship is sinking. You are sinking individually. The society is sinking. The world itself is sinking and becoming cold and running out of energy eventually as it spirals into nothingness. Which is why you need to get out of here, which is why you need to transcend the world which is imploding, which is going down by the bow, which is why we employ the great work, which is to become aware of a condition which I call non-localized and non-eventful, having no duration, that is being eternal. And yet also having consciousness and beingness and bliss, Sit Sat Ananda, to put it in Hindu terms, positioned or integral to the condition of infinite expansion into the transcendental realm. So it all gets a bit kind of metaphysical and a bit kind of airy-fairy, even more when we think about all this. And perhaps we shouldn't really think about it over much or even at all. This should be sort of in the back of our minds, as it were, as we continue to study our dreams and become aware of our inner life, interior life, as it were. Don't really care too much about the ultimate objective. Just, the world is a sandbox. Just keep on doing what you do in a sandbox game. And the objectives will gradually unfold, and the ultimate objective will gradually unfold when you get there, when you actually complete the quests and sub-tasks that you have to complete. Guess who likes to play computer games? That's a good way of looking at it anyway. So accept, the great affirmational word that goes with Yesod, which means foundation. To accept is to lay down a great foundation, a rock on which to put your feet, so that you don't become frustrated, so that you don't become megalomaniacal or sociopathic as a result of being driven mad by things that you can't accept, that you're kicking against the pricks to change. And yet what you can change is so limited, really. What is causal is so limited that, you're just setting yourself up for a fall, really. But if you go with the flow, which is partly dream work on one hand, and acceptance of the world as it is on the other, then you will begin the spiritual path with great confidence and certainty. And strength behind you. And of course, it should be remembered that the ninth Sephirot Yesod is, of course, the true beginning of this spiritual path, because Malkut, the 10th Sephirot, is merely the physical realm. It's the scaffold on which all this hangs. It doesn't. Yesod is the true foundation of the true path as it begins to unfold, the true path towards the transcendence that you need to follow. So it's interesting that you have to accept a lot of things before you can actually step forward on the path, which I think is quite interesting as well, as a juxtaposition. You have to kind of accept and walk slowly initially, and don't run before you can walk, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So I hope this affirmation accept. I mean, there's plenty more to contemplate with this word, and you should really regularly and every day accept things and to practice acceptance and to contemplate acceptance. Both of the ideas that I presented here and ideas that come up as a result of your meditation and your introspection. So I will leave you in the capable hands of a person who is experiencing Yesod, or the foundation, and who knows when I will be back with more ideas about more Sephirot of the Tree of Life. They ideas come and go, and some of them stick, and I put them down. But you can't force the issue. Do you know what I mean? You can't sort of say, right, it's Wednesday, I'm going to do this Sephirot today, and if I don't, I'll get really angry. It doesn't work like that, and it's not good to do that kind of thing or think like that, you see. Okay, so thanks very much for watching this rather peculiar kind of random ramble, and I hope some of it at least makes sense to you.